From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Ageless Enthusiasm. Coming up on this episode of Ageless Enthusiasm, I speak with Regina Miller, who coped with the loss of her daughter by writing a book to help others heal.
Helen, I say, Mindy is a busier angel than she was in life.
Also, I check in with Jim Fulston, who survived a massive stroke and came back better than before.
I raised my arms, but this is all I could get out of my left arm. Had no feeling, no movement at that point in my left leg. They told me to smile, and at that point I knew they thought I was having a stroke. But I'm 47, I couldn't possibly be having a stroke.
I'm Mindy East. All that is coming up on this episode of Ageless Enthusiasm. Welcome to Ageless Enthusiasm. I'm your host, Mindy East. My guest today is Regina Miller of Trailblazers Academy and R. Miller Consulting. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you, Mindy. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's a delight to have you.
Thank you.
So you've been in the childcare industry for all your career life.
Yes.
Where did you get your start?
Virginia, in Chesapeake, Virginia, at a little small daycare called Elizabeth River Child Care Center. And I'm not going to tell you, well, I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm 60 years old, and I started in childcare when I was 14.
Wow.
It was my first job.
Wow.
So I love it.
So you've always been in childcare, and then you started your own business here in Wichita. How long ago was that?
Trailblazers Academy was started 14 years ago. We're actually working on number 15. We recently relocated our school from Woodlawn to North Rock Road.
Right. What was it called before?
Princeton.
Right.
Center, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember
So
that.
That name has a long history here too.
And then I know you've been an outstanding leader in women from the Wichita Business Journal.
Absolutely.
And tell us about your new R. Miller Consulting. How long ago did that start?
R. Miller isn't new anymore. I figure after 5 years, we can't call her a baby anymore. She's a successful award-winning company.
Good.
And when I say she, it's me and one other employee.
Okay.
And we run our business for small business owners who want to do either startup, not just for childcare, all companies. We do training, mentoring. I'll travel a lot for that, for presentations, and it's exciting.
You're a speaker as well.
Oh yeah, I just got asked to speak at National Child Care Association. We're doing a big webinar on April 19th.
Oh, that's exciting. Now tell me, do you have a favorite quote or scripture or motto that you tell your clients in your consulting?
Well, I don't know that I have my quote for my clients is to dream big and then live bigger. So I like for them to continue their dreams no matter how many obstacles they face. And I try and be there and coach that through. For me personally, my quote is 1 Peter 5:7, just casting my cares.
Yes.
And sure, I keep going on.
Wow. And, unfortunately, things happen in our life that we don't see coming, and you experienced the loss of your precious daughter, Helen.
Yes.
And I know that was a very traumatic experience for you.
Yes, it was. But Helen, I say, Mindy, is a bigger and busier angel than she was in life. She is so much a part of Trailblazers, even still today. Her scholarship fund gives teachers an opportunity to go to college and pay for books and classes. Wow. And we've done that a couple of times since her passing in January 22. But that definitely wasn't ready for my 36-year-old daughter to go away. That just wasn't in my plans.
From what I understand, that's like the most traumatic experience that we can face is the loss of a child, no matter how old they are.
I've lost a mother, a father, two sisters, and brother, and nothing prepared me for the hole in my heart that Helen put there.
Sure.
I think it's the womb thing. You
Yeah.
carry your children inside of you, so when
They're
they're
part
gone,
of
they're
us.
part of you. And like, she was my best friend, and so there was that piece missing as well. But you're absolutely right. There's nothing that prepares you for the loss of a child. And that being said, I want to, in the cards one day, open a place where grieving parents and siblings can come. I want a 24-hour spot where they can lay their head and talk about their grief, because when I was going through my lowest point, I searched high and low here in Wichita, and there was no place like that.
Wow. So you came up with that vision.
With that business idea, yeah.
Wow, that would be very well received.
Oh, yeah, I believe so. It's needed.
How did you walk through your grief? I know you wrote a book.
Yes, yes.
It's the life celebration that never ends.
Yes.
Was this a healing part of your experience?
Very much so. I had started a leadership book, and it's still sitting on a flash drive. Helen and her brother, and I talk about that in that book. Helen and her brother teased me all the time about, when are you going to finish your leadership book? But the moment that Helen was called home to glory, something in me said, you can't let her story end. That's why it's titled The Life Celebration That Never Ends, because if you knew my Helen, she always brought the joy.
Her beautiful face.
When she passed, there's not one person that's approached me and said, I had a fight with your daughter, or your daughter was mean to me. Not one. So her life was a testimony of love and that legacy I don't want to leave. So I began penning it probably 2 months after she passed, and I put it down a couple of times, and my director at the daycare, Miss Jasmine, kept saying, you have to write that book. You have to talk about Helen. So in the middle of that book is a bunch of pictures and her wedding and her travels around the country.
She was a world traveler.
Oh my goodness.
Doesn't she have in-laws in Africa?
She has in-laws in Africa, but she went to Turkey and Germany and Italy and all by herself. Fierce, just fierce.
And fearless.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And I always had a mission. Like, she never came home without a friend. So when she passed, I had lots of cards and condolences from people all over the world that said, you know, our encounter was brief, but I'll never forget her. That's Helen.
That's amazing.
That's that life celebration that never ends.
That's amazing. So when you think about a life well lived,
yes,
it's not the length, but it's the quality, not the quantity.
It is. And Helen was so big on touching people's lives and leaving them better than when she found them. And my husband and I joke about all the time that our home was like the Kool-Aid house, because she'd bring everybody home because Dad and I could help them. And, you know, little did she know, you know, we're like, Helen, we don't have any more room. We don't have any funds for that. She's like, sure you do, you know, because that's Helen.
That's Helen. Did she do the majority of her growing up here in Wichita?
Yes, she moved here when she was 10 years old, and she passed at 36. So the most of her growing was here in Wichita.
Okay.
Yeah, her graduated from college and high school, Heights High School. Yeah, so
a lot of memories here.
Yes, a
lot of
sweet college friends and high school friends that call me Mama Regina and keep up with me, and we get to talk about Helen. That's my one thing, Mindy. I never want to stop talking about her. And I apologize for cracking on you a little bit, but I never want anyone to feel like they can't approach me and say, you know I miss Helen, and how are you, and what's going on, and what's Helen's school doing, because that's her school.
What message do you have for other parents that might be grieving or going through the same thing that you went through?
Get out of that bed. Get out of that bed. That was the hardest thing for me after she passed. I just wanted to pull the covers up and never ever get up again, and close both of my businesses, and just
wow.
I contemplated that.
Wow.
Yeah. Shut out the world. Stop being a community advocate, and just lay there and be till God called me home. You can't do that.
No. And as a tribute to the memory of the person that we lost, they wouldn't want us to give up.
No.
Either.
And she wouldn't. And I talk about that in the book as well, how, you know, my doctor is a personal friend. I'm going to give him a shout out, Dr. Kevin Hoppick. And, you know, how he would just say, you got, you know, you can't give up like this. We got to move on.
Right.
And so for me, it was, I'm not a person who consumes alcohol, never have no sweets. I'll eat you out of the house and a home on sweets. But so for me, it wasn't about soothing my hurt. It was more of getting up and just putting one foot in front of the other. And then as being, I'm a very busy lady. And so I knew once I got up and got back out, I'd be okay, but I wouldn't stop. So I needed to get up and get out.
Well, I've seen you carry yourself through with grace.
Thank you.
From afar.
Thank you.
And I know that you've inspired so many people just from your example.
Yeah.
So
that's very touching for me when I get cards or tons of inbox messages that say, you know, I don't know how you do it, but I watch you and you've given me hope. And parents, so I joined this group on Facebook called the Grieving Parents, and the person who handles the host of that group says, oh my goodness, you know, you've inspired so many people. And I think that's what Helen would want, for her story not to just die with me and just sit inside of me and be sad.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and it's nice that you found a community that you can engage with, because I mean, pain is pain.
Oh, yeah.
So even if someone's lost someone that isn't a child, maybe a spouse, it's still beneficial.
Hurts.
And you can help each other through your hurt.
And so, you know, that's another thing. You know, I think God must have a special place for me up there, because lost mother and a father and siblings. And so I know that pain as well.
Wow.
But the pain of a child is just sucks the life out of you.
I can imagine.
You just look around and little things trigger you. So you have to be prepared for that trigger and know how you're going to handle it.
Right. Well, and you know, there are no relationships this side of heaven that are ever permanent.
Never.
So we always have to be prepared. Either someone's going to lose us or we're going to lose
someone.
them. So.
That's right.
Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
My next guest survived a stroke in his 40s and now has become a better version of himself than he was back then. Welcome, Jim Fulston.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, Jim, you're the owner of Fulston Construction.
Yes.
Here in Wichita. And you had a health crisis, a very serious episode that happened to you when you were in your late 40s. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. I love to refer to it as my minor medical incident. My wife does not see it as quite so minor.
Yes.
But yeah, I was 47. If you had talked to me on the phone, we didn't know each other, I would have told you I was in pretty good health. I would have said maybe I'm a little chubby. The reality was I was in really poor health. I didn't see myself quite as chubby as I was. And I was headed for a disaster and struck one night.
Wow.
Yeah, wife and I were working around the house one day, fell asleep on the sofa about 9 o'clock, woke up at 9:30. I said, let's go to bed. Everything was normal. About midnight, I woke up and I was very uncomfortable. Didn't recognize anything was wrong. I was trying to turn on my side and I was literally flopping around in the bed.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm going to wake my wife up. I'm going to get up and take my shirt off to get more comfortable. As soon as I stood up, I hit the floor.
Ooh.
Completely paralyzed on my left side.
Wow. Yeah. Massive stroke.
Yes, it was not a TIA, it was a stroke.
Sure.
So she called the ambulance, and talking to them, they started asking her questions and asking me to do things like raise my arms. And I raised my arms, but this is all I could get out of my left arm.
Okay.
Had no feeling, no movement at that point in my left leg. They told me to smile, and at that point I knew they thought I was having a stroke. But I'm 47, I couldn't possibly
Nobody does
be
that.
having a stroke.
Sure.
That's for old people.
Right.
I wasn't an old person. So eventually I was taken to the hospital, spent about 3 days in the hospital, and then 3 weeks in a rehab hospital learning how to walk again.
Okay. So did your mobility return to you at that point in time?
Very slowly. When I left the hospital after 3 weeks, I actually left with a limp.
Okay.
It would take almost a full year to get to the point where I would say I was fully recovered.
Wow. So what kind of lifestyle changes did you make during that year?
You know, I started immediately. I actually I went to Craigslist, I found a personal trainer, hired him while I was still in the hospital.
Good for you.
He came and I kind of interviewed him there. He couldn't start the week I got out, but the week after we started, I'm pretty fortunate. I've got a fairly nice home gym. And so 7 years later, I still have a personal trainer 3 days a week.
Same guy?
No,
Different guy?
Yeah, he was with me for a couple years, and he was only here because his father was sick. After his father passed away, he moved on, but he handed me off to someone
Sure.
who I've been his longest client. I think I was both of their longest clients.
Oh, very good. So you're very committed.
You know, the one thing that I think is most important to my journey is consistency.
Okay.
I get up early every morning. I'm on the treadmill. I eat a very consistent diet. I fast on a very regular basis.
Tell us about fasting, because it's very beneficial, but not everyone knows how to do it properly.
Yes, and there's a lot of people, when they say fast, they're really speaking intermittent fasting or eating in what we call a time-restricted window. And I generally fast every day, and from a time-restricted eating standpoint, and eat oftentimes one meal a day, or sometimes I might eat in a very compressed 3 or 4 hour window.
So what are the hours that you eat, and what do you eat?
So I typically don't eat until 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And then usually I'm eating a second meal. If it's a second meal, it may be 5 or 6.
Okay.
Sometimes it's only one meal at 5 or 6.
Wow.
And then I often will throw in a longer fast. So today, right now, I'm at probably, 40 hours. So I'll do a 3-day fast this week.
Wow.
I ate Sunday night. I will not eat again until tomorrow evening.
Wow. So do you drink, obviously, something? Water?
Yes,
Just water?
I'll drink coffee.
Water and coffee for that
Some
duration.
people are very pure and they think it should be a water-only fast. But a lot of us are happy to keep our coffee. But nothing in the coffee, just black.
How did COVID change things for you? Did that impact you at all, your workouts?
It did, just from a standpoint of working out with my trainer.
Okay.
So he was still comfortable to come to the house, and I was comfortable to have him there. But we had, at the time, teenage twin boys. And when COVID first came, we were scared. We didn't know what we were dealing with.
We're all new to everyone.
Yeah, so we were pretty strict with them and said, you're not going to go hang out with people. So to be consistent, we switched to Zoom.
Okay.
And the intent was to go back to in person shortly after COVID was over. But I've stayed with Zoom because it works out more conveniently for me.
Okay.
Generally, if I need to be a little bit late, or maybe I want to go a little bit early because I was able to wrap up my day early, I can adjust the time he's typically available. My trainer's actually working on his PhD right now, become a physical therapist.
Okay.
And so his school schedule has changed, and so I might have to wait for him to drive out, but now we can just join on Zoom. He'll call me from his car and we get started. So it's actually one of the benefits has been making our schedules more flexible.
Do you have a motto or a scripture, or what carried you through that dark time?
You know, it was belief in myself. Like, I knew I had the power. It was a choice to either become a victim, which would have been easy. You know, it was easy to blame other people, right? It wasn't fair, right? I was not particularly healthy, but I didn't smoke. There were a lot more overweight people than I was. And so there was a little anger, a little unfairness.
Okay. So you had to work through that.
I definitely had to work through that, but it happened very quickly. You know, it was kind of the first night I was alone in the hospital. I went through all those emotions.
Sure.
I don't know if you can be depressed in the 30-minute period, but I might have been. I mean, I cried. I was scared what was going to happen to my family.
Right.
Was I going to recover? Was I going to be able to provide for them? We actually were in the middle of a remodel. And my house probably wasn't worth what I owed the bank because we were doing some work ourselves. So it was a very scary time.
Right.
But I will never be able to explain it, but a calmness came over me. And then I get angry. Angry at myself because I felt like I was having a pity party.
Yeah.
And it was time to go to work. And I literally pulled the cover off myself, started performing rehab on myself, not knowing maybe I was going to make things worse by doing it, but it was more important for me to start doing something. And that's always been it. I always take action.
Now that you have come through that process, through that experience, what advice would you give to somebody else?
A couple things. Number one is the consistency. You have to keep taking action. You have to always
Can't be hit or miss.
make that right decision, whether it's regarding showing up for the diet or showing up for the workout or eating the proper foods, whatever you've decided that is. And the other thing is, I think we really have to take health into our own hands.
Isn't it interesting? I think as our generation, you know, as we baby boomers get older, we'll have an entirely different experience based on what we know and what has worked, so we can help benefit others.
Yeah, I sometimes walk into my doctor and I'm not sure he likes me because I'm armed with tons of information.
Yeah. So why did you have a stroke? Did your doctors have any answers for you?
We'll never know. I mean,
okay.
the short answer is I drew a short straw. I was partially probably responsible for some of my choices to create that straw. It could have been a soft plaque that broke loose.
Okay.
I had high blood pressure. It was controlled, but not as tightly as it's controlled now. So it could have been related to that, but we'll just never know for sure.
Okay, so basically your diet and lifestyle took you down a wrong path.
Absolutely.
And now you're on a much better track. Well, very good. Thank you. So Jim, I've heard about your short-term goals that got you to this point. What are your long-term goals?
You know, my goal is to live to be 150.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll make it, but really, I'm not going to a place where I say, hey, I've made it, and now I can go and start eating pizza and ice cream again. My long-term goal is to continue on this path and continue to improve and get healthier by the day.
Now you have a birthday coming up here shortly. Will that involve any indulgences, any pizza, ice cream, cake?
It won't. Wine is my one indulgence.
There you go.
It's the one thing I put in my body that I probably shouldn't, but I'm not quite willing to give that.
Well, like a fine wine, I think we age well as we get older. So you're on the right track. Keep it up.
I would agree.
Okay. Okay, now we're back. And Regina, I would love to ask you a little sensitive question because it's very difficult to lose a child on a marriage.
Oh, yes.
How did your marriage sustain and what carried you through?
Well, first of all, I have to give a shout out to my love of my life, Jessie. We've been married for 37 years. We're best friends. Helen's my best girlfriend. He's my best guy friend. And we leaned into each other. You know, a lot of times we discovered that through counseling with our pastors, that parents would run away with their grief and hide it from each other. And that's when they pull apart. They find someone else to confide in, and then that turns ugly. But we ran to each other instead of away from each other. The one thing that I do admire about Jesse is he handled his grief very, very privately, but then would come with me and let me have mine. And then one day I got to see his, and we put them together.
Shared that space,
yeah.
and you were vulnerable together.
Yes.
And it sounds like your faith carried you through, and your church family.
Oh my goodness.
Your pastors.
Without my Lord and Savior, I don't know that I would be able to sit here with you today and be competent, you know, because it does tilt you to the end. It tilts you over when you lose a child, and you start asking yourself why, or wonder what you could have done different. But you know, with my faith, I know there's nothing I could have done. And in His time, and it's perfect.
Right.
So
yeah, we don't understand. Do we?
Yeah.
We don't understand His ways.
Yeah,
They're so much higher than our ways.
We decided to just continue on. We dated each other every Friday night. We have a date night, and we just resumed our date nights after we laid Helen to rest, because we knew that's what she would want.
Yes. And
so
I know you travel quite a bit.
Oh, we love to travel. So
you get to go to some fun places. One of your favorite places is on the East Coast.
Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Why
is that special to you?
Oh my goodness, God's there. It's the ocean. The Pacific Ocean is, I mean, the Atlantic Ocean is just so comforting. We go there and we visit all the little ports and little towns, and you just never get tired of it. And it's just the time of year that we choose to go. It's right at the end of tourist season, so it's just nice. It's nice.
Wonderful.
And all the seafood, Mindy.
Oh yeah, gotta love that seafood.
Yes.
Well, Regina, you're a delight. Thank you so much. We wish you the very best as you continue forward, and thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you, Mindy, for having me.
And thank you for joining us today on Ageless Enthusiasm.